I still remember the day I met Rebecca. It was at an air show, a sprawling event filled with the roar of engines and the excited chatter of the crowd. She stood out to me immediately, not just because of her beauty, though that was undeniable, but because of the way she carried herself, confident yet approachable. We met at a soda stall when she was away from her father, and it felt like fate. There was an instant connection, the kind you don't question but simply lean into. We exchanged numbers, and the rest unfolded as naturally as breathing. Over the next few weeks, we met a few more times. Each meeting deepened my admiration for her. She was kind, intelligent, and had a warmth about her that drew me in completely. Dating Rebecca was effortless, like finding the missing piece to a puzzle you didn't know you were solving. 3 years later, I knew I didn't want to spend another day without her. Proposing to her was one of the easiest decisions I've ever made. When she said yes, I felt like the luckiest man alive. Meeting her father, Ronald, was a different kind of experience. Ronald was never just the man I thought he was, and I'm not sure I'll ever be able to fully understand him. When I first met him, he was a retired Marine, a man of routine and discipline, haunted by his past but still carrying himself with an air of authority. Rebecca was his only family, his only connection to the world, and I could see how fiercely protective he was of her. But I never knew the full scope of who Ronald really was, what kind of man he had been. It wasn't until much later that I learned the truth. Ronald had been more than just a Marine. He'd been a CIA assassin, operating in the shadows, doing things that he could never speak about. The missions he went on, some of them, he could never bring himself to tell Rebecca or anyone else. I'd overheard bits and pieces of his conversations with old colleagues, whispers of his time in covert operations, but the full weight of what he had done didn't sink in until much later. When I looked into his eyes, I saw the years of experience. He had killed, he had been a tool of the government, and his past had shaped the man who now lived with us. It was strange, the way he fit into my life. At first, when Rebecca and I got married, we lived in a small apartment, but it quickly became clear that Ronald couldn't be alone anymore. His condition was worsening. His PTSD, the sleepless nights, the outbursts, the way he would sometimes wake up, confused and panicked. I couldn't just leave him in his house alone, without anyone to care for him. And as much as it was a burden, I had come to see Ronald as a father figure of sorts. Despite the strange, sometimes volatile relationship we had, I couldn't imagine letting him slip away into isolation. I asked him to move in with me. It wasn't a decision I made lightly. I had my own life, my own plans with Rebecca, but the thought of him being alone again, slipping deeper into whatever darkness he was trying to outrun, it didn't sit right with me. So, I suggested it one evening, after dinner when we were sitting in the living room, nursing beers. "Ronald," I said, cautiously, "why don't you come live with us? You know, stay here with Rebecca and me. We can make it work." He didn't answer immediately. He just stared at the bottle in his hand, his fingers wrapped around it tightly, as if contemplating something only he knew. Finally, he looked at me, his eyes sharp and calculating. "Are you sure, Gary?" he asked. "I don't want to be a burden." I felt a lump in my throat. I knew he was proud, too proud to admit how much he needed help, but I also knew that I couldn't stand to see him like this, not after everything he'd done for his country, not after all the sacrifices he'd made. "I'm sure," I said, feeling the weight of the decision, but also the relief that came with it. "You've been a father figure to me. It's the least I can do." He looked at me for a long moment, as though weighing my words, and then nodded. "All right," he said gruffly. "I'll move in. But no funny business, Gary. I'm not here to babysit you." It wasn't exactly a warm approval, but it was enough. And from that day on, Ronald became a permanent part of our lives. He had his own space in the house, and although he often retreated into his old habits, waking up at odd hours and pacing the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that having him there was the right thing to do. He had fought wars, seen horrors most people would never know, and yet here he was, in his twilight years, living under my roof. I owed him that much. Some peace, some semblance of stability in his life. It was around 2 in the morning. I woke to the sound of a scream so raw, so full of terror, it sent chills down my spine. Ronald had woken from a nightmare, drenched in sweat and gasping for air. It wasn't just a bad dream. It was like he was back in the middle of a mission, reliving something too painful to put into words. On other nights, it was worse. He would wake up disoriented, shouting orders, or taking cover as though he was under fire. Rebecca told me that during those moments, it was vital to approach him with caution, to speak calmly and let him reorient himself. We took precautions, especially with his gun collection. Ronald was meticulous about maintaining his firearms, but they were always locked up. He could only access them under supervision. It was a necessary measure, not because anyone feared him, but because they feared what could happen if the past came rushing back too vividly in a moment of confusion. Despite all this, Ronald was a good man, and I respected him deeply. He loved Rebecca fiercely and wanted the best for her. I could see that even through the stoic exterior he maintained. He taught me that strength isn't just about what you endure, but how you live with the scars it leaves behind. Being part of Rebecca's life meant understanding her father, his struggles, and the way they shaped her and her family. It wasn't always easy, but it was worth it. Ronald was a man of many battles, but he loved his family, and for that, I admired him. Rebecca and I got married in a beautiful ceremony where her father proudly walked her down the aisle. He wore his military uniform adorned with the medals he had earned over his distinguished career. Seeing him like that, I truly understood the pride he took in his service, no matter the toll it had taken on his mind. His love for his job and his heritage as a Marine shone brightly that day. Rebecca was his only daughter, and he was her only immediate family. Given his need for supervision, we decided it was best for him to stay with us after we got married. Having lost my own parents a few years earlier, I was quietly yearning for a father figure in my life. I wasn't sure what the future had in store, but I hoped it would be meaningful. Rebecca took a job at a local marketing firm, while I continued working in a tech company. After some discussion, we chose to move into her father's home. Instead of paying rent, we took over the household expenses, ensuring everything was cared for. It was a decision that brought him immense happiness. He didn't need much, just the comfort of having loved ones around. Ronald thrived on company, often sitting with us to share stories from his time in the military. He spoke with pride about his experiences and fondly remembered his comrades, calling them some of the finest men he had ever known. His tales gave us a glimpse of the man he was beyond his struggles, a dedicated soldier and a loving father who valued loyalty and courage above all else. My evenings quickly fell into a comforting routine. I'd come home from work, grab a cold beer, and sit down with Ronald, the old man, as I fondly started calling him. It became our time to unwind together, sharing stories, talking about the day, or simply enjoying the silence. Over time, I noticed a real change in him. He seemed genuinely happy to have me around, and his condition improved noticeably. The haunting episodes I'd been warned about, where he'd wake up screaming in the middle of the night, never happened while I was there. It was as though the company and the sense of stability helped him find some peace. Rebecca, meanwhile, was as wonderful as ever. She had this beauty about her that never failed to captivate me, but it wasn't just physical. Her warmth and passion made every moment with her feel special. She also loved being close, and our intimacy was one of the things that kept our connection so strong. Sometimes, though, she could get a little carried away in the moment, her enthusiasm threatening to wake the entire house. On more than one occasion, I had to gently cover her mouth, chuckling softly as I reminded her that we didn't want to wake her father. For the next 3 years, life was smooth and fulfilling. Ronald continued to thrive, finding joy in the simplest things, and Rebecca was as vibrant and loving as ever. We decided early on to delay starting a family. Neither of us felt ready for the added responsibilities, and we wanted to enjoy our time together, free of any pressures or distractions. Those years were some of the best of my life, filled with love, laughter, and the sense of having a real family. Those 3 years were filled with beautiful memories. Rebecca and I took several vacations overseas, each one an adventure we both cherished. Exploring new places, experiencing different cultures, and just being in each other's company made those trips unforgettable. Back home, one of my favorite activities with Ronald was taking him to the shooting range. It was like watching a kid in a candy shop. The moment he had a gun in his hands, he transformed into someone entirely different. His posture, his focus, everything about him screamed precision and skill. Ronald was an expert marksman, and I couldn't help but admire the ease with which he handled firearms. His collection of guns at home was a testament to his passion, though I kept the key to the safe to ensure everything stayed secure. It was a system that worked well for all of us. Last year, however, life shifted. I got promoted at work, which was a milestone I was proud of, but it came with additional responsibilities. Longer hours at the office became a necessity, and my daily routine with Ronald inevitably suffered. I still made it a point to have dinner with him, but it wasn't quite the same. Those leisurely evenings we used to share with a beer and conversation became less frequent. Rebecca also started spending more time at her job. She was taking on more projects and responsibilities, and while I admired her drive, it meant we were both around the house less than before. things began to change in ways I hadn't expected. One significant shift was that Rebecca started getting dropped off at home by a new guy. She mentioned he was just a colleague, but I couldn't shake the uneasy feeling it gave me. She also started spending more time glued to her phone, texting and scrolling, often with a faint smile or a distracted expression that felt different. For the first time in 3 years, she began going out for girls' nights. While I didn't mind her having her fun, it was a sudden change from her usual routine. Meanwhile, Ronald was feeling the effects of the increased distance. With Rebecca and me both busier and out of the house more often, he grew quieter and more withdrawn. I noticed him becoming a bit depressed, his energy fading. Then one night, I found him wandering around the house, his hands mimicking the grip of a gun, moving as if he were clearing a room of enemies. It was unsettling, a clear sign that the past was creeping back into his mind without the grounding presence he needed. Rebecca, too, seemed different. Our once vibrant intimacy had dulled. She wasn't as vocal or engaged, and I could tell she wasn't enjoying it the way she used to. One night, it hit a breaking point. We were in bed, trying to reconnect, but instead of being present with me, she was casually scrolling through her phone. "Are you serious right now?" I snapped, pulling away from her. "What?" she replied, almost defensively, still holding her phone. "I was just checking something. While we're in the middle of this. Do you even care anymore, Rebecca?" My voice was rising with frustration. "You've been distant for weeks, months, even. What's going on with you?" She put the phone down and sat up, her tone sharp. "Don't start with this, Gary. You're always busy with work, and now you want to act like everything's my fault? That's not what I'm saying." I shot back, pacing the room. "I know I've been busy, but at least I'm trying. You've checked out completely. You're on your phone constantly, going out all the time. And now there's this guy dropping you off? What am I supposed to think?" Her eyes flared. "He's just a friend, Gary. God, do you even trust me? Or are you just looking for something to blame because you can't handle things at work?" "That's not fair," I said, my voice dropping slightly. "This isn't about work. It's about us. I feel like I'm losing you, Rebecca. And instead of talking to me about it, you're pulling away." She folded her arms, her voice icy now. "Maybe if you weren't so busy with everything else, you'd see that I'm just trying to have a life of my own too." "That's not a life, Rebecca," I said, feeling a mixture of hurt and anger. "It's avoidance, and it's pushing us apart." The fight ended with us both retreating into silence. I slept on the couch that night, staring at the ceiling and wondering where things had gone so wrong. For the first time since we got married, I felt a crack in the foundation of our relationship, and I wasn't sure how to fix it. For 3 days, I didn't speak to Rebecca. The silence between us was heavy, but I couldn't bring myself to break it. It was Ronald who finally noticed something was off and asked me what was going on. At first, I felt embarrassed to share such a personal issue with him, but eventually, I opened up. He listened quietly, his face serious, and after a moment, he said, "Gary, don't ignore the signs. If you think something's wrong, you need to find out the truth. Check again, thoroughly this time." His words stayed with me. I realized I couldn't sit back and pretend everything was fine. That night, while Rebecca slept, I made up my mind. I picked up her phone, my hands trembling, and went through it. To my surprise, I found nothing incriminating. Still, Ronald's advice echoed in my mind, and I decided to take it a step further. I installed spyware on her phone and synced it to my laptop, determined to uncover whatever was hidden. It didn't take long. The very next night, I saw messages pop up on the screen. She was texting a man, and the conversation left no room for doubt. The texts were sexual, graphic, even, and it became clear she had already been intimated with him. My heart sank as I read further, and then, as if to twist the knife, I saw her send him explicit photos of herself. As this unfolded before my eyes, I felt a flood of emotions: anger, betrayal, heartbreak. Tears rolled down my cheeks as I stared at the screen, unable to look away. I had done everything for her, given her my all, and this was what I got in return. The weight of her betrayal crushed me, and the love I had so deeply for her felt like it was being torn apart piece by piece. As I kept reading the messages, my worst fears were confirmed. They were planning to meet and get intimate the very next day, on the day I was scheduled to leave for an official trip. I had already told Rebecca about my plans, and now I realized she had used that information to arrange this rendezvous. My anger boiled over, a mix of betrayal and humiliation. I sat there debating my next move. Should I confront her immediately, or should I wait and catch them in the act, red-handed? While I was still deciding, I noticed Rebecca beginning to delete the texts. Suddenly, it all made sense. That was why her phone had appeared clean before. She had been erasing everything. I clenched my fists, swallowing the rage that threatened to spill over. With nothing more to do that night, I went to the couch and tried to calm myself, but I couldn't bring myself to sleep in our bed. My mind raced with scenarios, my chest heavy with heartache. Sometime in the middle of the night, I felt a presence nearby. I opened my eyes to see Ronald standing over me. He gently placed a blanket over me, saying nothing, then quietly walked away. It was a small gesture, but it hit me deeply, a reminder that at least someone in this house cared. The next morning, I woke up to an empty house. Rebecca had already left for work. As I sat at the dining table, Ronald joined me for breakfast. He studied me for a moment before speaking. "Gary," he began, his voice calm but probing. "Why were you sleeping on the couch last night?" I hesitated, unsure of how to respond. "Just needed some space, I guess," I said, avoiding his gaze. "Might have to leave soon anyway." He set his coffee cup down, his piercing eyes locking onto mine. "Leave?" he repeated. "What's going on, son?" I stayed silent, but he didn't let it drop. "Gary," he said softly, leaning forward. "Is Rebecca cheating on you?" The directness of his question hit me like a punch to the gut. My chest tightened, and I looked away, trying to hold back the wave of emotions threatening to overwhelm me. I stared at Ronald, shocked by his statement. Disbelief coursed through me, but his face was calm, unwavering. "I've spent a long time hunting bad men, Gary," he said, his voice low but firm. "I know a bad person when I look them in the eyes. And lately," he paused, his gaze growing distant. "Rebecca hasn't looked me in the eyes. She just tries to walk past me, like she can't face me." His words hit hard, but before I could respond, he continued, "If I had come to you and told you she was cheating, you might not have believed me. That's why I told you to find out for yourself." There was a heavy silence between us, but then he added something that stopped me cold. "I've stopped taking my medicines." "What?" I asked, alarmed. "Why would you do that, Ronald? You need them." He shook his head. "No, Gary, I don't. Not anymore." I struggled to process everything he was saying. After a moment, I decided to tell him everything. "Ronald," I said, my voice heavy with emotion, "you were right." I checked her phone. She's been texting another guy, and it's not just that. They've already been together. She's been sending him pictures. My voice faltered as I reached for my laptop and showed him the texts and images. Ronald stared at the screen, silent. Slowly, I saw his eyes well up, and a tear slipped down his cheek. He wiped it away quickly, as if trying to maintain his composure. Then he looked at me, his expression a mix of sorrow and resolve. "You don't deserve this, son," he said softly. "You've been good to her. Better than she deserved, it seems. If you choose to leave her, to divorce her, I won't hold it against you. I understand." I swallowed hard, my throat tight. "I'm not sure what to do yet," I admitted. "I'm thinking of catching her red-handed with him. I want to confront her, face to face." But Ronald shook his head, his tone firm. "That's not necessary, Gary. You won't gain anything from it. It'll only make things worse, for you, not for her. Sometimes, it's better to let things go than to carry the weight of revenge." His words lingered in the air, heavy with meaning. Then he looked at me, his voice quieter, but full of a fatherly kind of care. "I know it's not my place to ask, but leave it there, son. For your sake, not hers." His request left me torn, caught between anger and his wisdom. I had always held a deep respect for Ronald, not just because of his service to the country, but also because he had become a father figure to me. I owed him a lot. With that in mind, I made my decision. I told him I would move out of the house and file for divorce. He didn't argue. He simply nodded in understanding. That same day, I packed my bags and left. Later that evening, Rebecca called me twice, but I didn't pick up. She then started texting me, but I ignored all her messages. She had no idea where I was or why I had left. She probably still thought I was away on my business trip. If only she had spoken to her father. The next morning, I received a call from the police station asking me to come down. I was filled with a sense of dread as I made my way to the police station. What I was about to hear completely shook me. The officer informed me that Ronald had shot a man inside their house the previous night. He said the man was still alive, but in critical condition. My stomach dropped when I learned that the man was naked, as was Rebecca. The officer explained that, given the circumstances, it seemed Ronald had mistaken the man for attempting to assault his daughter, and in an attempt to protect her, he had shot him. Under the circumstances, the officer said, "It looks like he acted in self-defense. You can post his bail if you'd like." I was stunned, but I agreed, not sure what else to do. I posted Ronald's bail, and we left the station together. As we arrived back at the house, Ronald got out of the car and motioned for me to join him inside. "Come on in, Gary," he said, his tone a little lighter than I expected. I followed him inside, my mind racing with questions. "Where's Rebecca?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "She's with her lover," he replied, his eyes slightly averted. "She's at the hospital." The way he said it, with such casualness, struck me, but I didn't say anything more. I needed answers, and I wasn't sure how much I was going to get. I couldn't hold back my questions anymore. "What happened last night, Ronald?" I asked, my voice tense with disbelief. He sighed deeply, his eyes heavy with the weight of what had occurred. "Well, since I stopped taking my meds, I don't sleep much at night. Last night was no different," he began, his voice quieter. "Rebecca, she came home with the guy, and he didn't leave. They were in the kitchen, and I heard them. Rebecca, well, she was being loud, like usual." He paused, as if reliving the moment. "I got up, saw them in the kitchen enjoying sex. I went for my gun." "Wait, how did you even get to your guns?" I asked, my mind spinning. Ronald looked at me, almost sadly, as though the answer was something I should have known all along. "I always had the keys, Gary," he said, his voice calm but carrying an edge. "I let you believe you were in control, but it was always me. I let you think you were holding the cards." I was stunned, the shock sinking deeper. "What you did, Ronald? It's illegal. You could have killed the guy." My words came out sharp, but I couldn't hold back the anger and confusion. Ronald shook his head, a bitter chuckle escaping his lips. "I'm just an old man, demented and broken. I saw an unknown man banging my beloved daughter. I got my hands on a gun, and I did what I thought was right, save my daughter." I stared at him, the weight of his words settling in my gut. "What if the guy had died?" I asked, my voice a mix of disbelief and growing fear. Ronald didn't flinch. He simply replied, "I shot him in the thigh. The bullet went straight through, and it's lodged in the kitchen table. The bullet, it talks to me. I know where it's going. I tell it whether to kill or just injure." A chill ran down my spine. In that moment, I realized I was talking to someone who wasn't just a confused old man, but a cold, calculated person, almost like a stone-cold assassin. Ronald seemed to sense my discomfort. He gave a faint smile, almost too calm for the situation. "Here, have another beer," he said, offering me a bottle. "Just relax, Gary. It's all under control." But nothing about the situation felt under control, and I couldn't shake the feeling that things were slipping into something much darker. Ronald then walked over to a drawer and pulled out a folder, handing it to me with a grim expression. "Here," he said quietly. I opened the folder, my eyes scanning the contents, and my heart sank when I saw it. His will. Everything he owned was left to me, with Rebecca completely left out. He leaned back in his chair, watching me with a calm, almost detached gaze. "The Packers will be here soon," he said, his tone matter of fact. "They'll take all of Rebecca's things to the hospital and dump them there." I felt a mix of confusion and dread, unsure of what to make of everything. Ronald, however, wasn't done. He handed me a piece of paper with a number on it. "This guy will call you tomorrow. He'll help you file for the divorce," he said, as if it was all just part of some routine. I sat there in silence, the weight of everything crashing down on me. I didn't know what to say. I was still trying to process it all, but it felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. He cracked open another beer, his movements slow and deliberate. Looking at me with a hint of mischief in his eyes, he chuckled and said, "You're a nice kid. Can I adopt you?" I couldn't help but let out a small, ironic smile, trying to mask the swirling chaos in my mind. I took a sip from my beer, the cold liquid doing little to numb the overwhelming sense of disbelief. "Sure, I'll be honored," I replied, not knowing what else to say. Rebecca continued calling me nonstop, but I refused to pick up. I couldn't bring myself to speak to her, not after everything that had unfolded. It didn't take long before the divorce was finalized. I walked away from it all, and surprisingly, Ronald, in his own way, also disowned her. He was done with her, too, and I think it was a way for him to reclaim some control over the chaos she had caused. Now, Rebecca is left to pick up the pieces of her shattered life. She's living alone, with no one by her side. Her affair partner, the one she'd been seeing behind my back, was too scared to face the consequences of what had happened. He packed up and left town without a second glance. It seems like everything she tried to hold on to slipped through her fingers, leaving her with nothing. She thought she could play the game without consequences, but now, she's facing the harsh reality of it all, alone. Surprisingly, No charges were filed against Ronald, despite the shooting incident. I can't help but feel that he had some connections or pulled a few strings to ensure that everything stayed under the radar. After all, he's not as helpless or as out of touch with the world as he sometimes pretends to be. I can't deny that he's a man who knows how to navigate tricky situations, especially when it comes to protecting his family, even if his methods are unconventional. 2 years have passed since everything unfolded. Life has moved on, or at least I've tried to make peace with it. I've started dating someone new, a woman who brings a sense of calm and normalcy back into my life. She's understanding, patient, and doesn't ask too many questions about my past, which is a relief. When I finally felt comfortable enough, I introduced her to Ronald. He's still living with me, and honestly, I can't imagine life without him. Despite everything, he's been a steady presence in my world. He's like a father to me, and I couldn't bear the thought of pushing him out. He still manages to surprise me with his insights into life, though his eccentricities remain as pronounced as ever. As for the relationship with my new girlfriend, it's still in its early stages, but things seem to be going well. I just know that Ronald is okay with her being around. He doesn't make a fuss, but every now and then, in his usual dry way, he'll make a comment or give me a look. The other day, as if on cue, he half-jokingly reminded me, "Just don't have sex in my kitchen, Gary." I laughed it off, but I knew he was serious. Ronald has his rules, and I guess that's just one of them. It's strange, though, how life has turned out. Despite all the chaos, I've found a rhythm, a new balance. Maybe it's not perfect, and there are still ghosts from the past lurking, but for now, I've made peace with it. And in a way, I think Ronald has too. Dear listeners, please share your thoughts in the comments section below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.